The morning sun cast long shadows across my 5-acre property as I sipped my coffee on the wraparound porch of my grandfather's old farmhouse. It had been exactly 3 months since I'd inherited this slice of heaven in what was once rural countryside, now slowly being consumed by the relentless march of suburban development. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd moved here to escape the chaos of city life, only to find myself on the front lines of a battle I never saw coming. My name is Jake Morrison, and at 34, I thought I'd finally found my sanctuary. The property had been in my family for over 60 years, a working farm that my grandfather had lovingly maintained until his passing. The house sat on a gentle hill, surrounded by mature oak trees and rolling pastures that stretched toward a small creek at the eastern boundary. A gravel driveway connected the house to Maple Ridge Road, winding through the trees in a way that provided both privacy and natural beauty. What I hadn't anticipated was the construction of Willowbrook Estates, a sprawling development of cookie-cutter McMansions that had sprouted like mushrooms after rain on the adjacent land. The developer had somehow managed to get the county to approve their plans despite the obvious infrastructure challenges, and now 200 families were crammed into what used to be the Hendersons' cattle pasture. The trouble started on a Tuesday morning in late September. I was in my workshop, a converted barn where I crafted custom furniture, my escape from 20 years in corporate consulting, when I heard the distinctive crunch of gravel under tires. This wasn't unusual. Delivery trucks occasionally used my driveway to turn around. But as I glanced out the window, I saw something that made my blood pressure spike. A bright red BMW SUV racing down my private driveway like it owned the place. I stepped outside, wiping sawdust from my hands, just in time to see the vehicle disappear around the bend toward Maple Ridge Road. Confused and more than a little annoyed, I decided to take a walk down my own driveway to investigate. What I discovered at the bottom of the hill made my jaw drop. Someone had removed the chain I kept across the entrance and propped open the metal gate that clearly marked the boundary of my property. Worse yet, there were fresh tire tracks. Lots of them, indicating this wasn't an isolated incident. My private driveway had apparently become a shortcut for residents of Willowbrook Estates who wanted to avoid the traffic backup at their main entrance. The geography of the situation became clear as I studied the area. The developers had built their entrance directly onto Maple Ridge Road, creating a bottleneck during rush hours. My driveway, which emerged about half a mile further down the road, provided a perfect alternative route for impatient commuters. They could cut through my land, save precious minutes, and avoid the congestion at their designated entrance. Immediately replaced the chain and added a heavy-duty padlock, along with several private property, no trespassing signs. I thought that would be the end of it. I was spectacularly wrong. The next morning, I was awakened at 6:30 a.m. by the sound of car doors slamming and raised voices. Stumbling to my bedroom window in my pajamas, I peered down toward the gate and couldn't believe what I was seeing. A woman in yoga pants and a designer jacket was standing beside a white Escalade, gesticulating wildly at my locked gate while speaking rapidly into her phone. Behind her, a line of vehicles had formed, at least 8 cars filled with frustrated commuters who had apparently made my driveway part of their daily routine. I threw on some clothes and marched down the Shisia hill, my anger building with every step. The woman, who I would later learn was Jennifer Walsh, president of the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association, spotted me approaching and immediately went on the offensive. "Excuse me," she called out in a voice that could cut glass. "Are you the owner of this property? Do you realize you're blocking a public thoroughfare? These people need to get to work." I stopped about 10 feet away, crossing my arms. "Ma'am, this is my private driveway on my private property. It's not a public road and these people are trespassing." Jennifer's perfectly manicured eyebrows shot up in disbelief. "That's impossible. We've been using this road for months. If it were private, there would be proper signage." I gestured to the multiple signs I'd posted just the day before. She glanced at them dismissively, as if they were somehow illegitimate. "Look," she continued, her tone shifting to what I assumed she thought was reasonable. "We're all neighbors here. The Willowbrook community represents a significant investment in this area. We're talking about 200 homes, Families with children, working professionals. Surely you can appreciate that we need convenient access to the main road. I appreciate that you need access, I replied, trying to keep my voice level. But that access needs to come from your own development, not through my property. Don't be ridiculous, Jennifer snapped, her facade of reasonableness evaporating. This road has been here longer than your little hobby farm. We have a right to use it. The insult stung, but I managed to maintain my composure. This hobby farm has been in my family for 3 generations. The driveway was built by my grandfather in 1962, and it has never been a public road. I have the deeds and surveys to prove it. By now, horns were honking from the growing line of cars behind Jennifer's Escalade. Several drivers had gotten out of their vehicles and were approaching our impromptu roadside conference. I could see the situation escalating and decided to end it quickly. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, I announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. But this is private property. You'll need to use the main entrance to your development. This is harassment! Jennifer shrieked. We'll see about this! She pulled out her phone again, and I heard her saying something about calling the sheriff's department. As the procession of vehicles reluctantly backed out of my driveway and headed toward their designated entrance, I thought the matter was resolved. Jennifer had made her threats, but surely once the authorities confirmed that this was indeed my private property, the trespassing would stop. I spent the rest of that day researching property law and reviewing my deed and survey documents. Everything was crystal clear. The driveway was entirely within my property boundaries, and I had every legal right to restrict access. I even called my insurance agent to make sure I wouldn't be liable if someone got hurt while trespassing on my land. But Jennifer Walsh wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. Over the next week, she launched what could only be described as a campaign of harassment. It started with official-looking letters from the Willowbrook Estates Community Association, demanding that I provide easement access across my property for the greater good of the community. The letters were filled with legal-sounding language about community cooperation, property values, and civic responsibility. When I didn't respond to her letters, Jennifer escalated her tactics. She began showing up at my gate every morning during rush hour, armed with a clipboard and an attitude. She'd stand there interviewing anyone who would listen, building what she called a case for community access rights. She filmed these encounters with her phone, creating what she described as documentation of the traffic crisis caused by my selfish refusal to cooperate. The whole situation might have been amusing if it weren't so infuriating. Here was a woman who had moved into a development built on what used to be farmland, now demanding that the remaining original landowner surrender his property rights for her convenience. The entitlement was breathtaking. Things came to a head on a Friday morning in early October. I was expecting a delivery of hardwood for a custom dining table I was building, and the truck driver called to say he was having trouble finding my driveway because there was some crazy lady with a clipboard blocking the entrance. When I arrived at the gate, I found Jennifer had positioned herself directly in front of it with a folding chair and a large poster board sign that read, "Property owner refuses community access, creating traffic hazard." She was handing out flyers to anyone who would take them and had somehow convinced 2 other Willowbrook residents to join her protest. "Ma'am, you need to move," I said as calmly as I could manage. "I have a delivery coming and you're blocking my driveway." "We have a right to peaceful protest on public property," she replied smugly, not moving from her chair. "This isn't public property. You're sitting on my land." Jennifer stood up slowly, a vindictive smile spreading across her face. "Actually, Mr. Morrison, I've done my research. This road was established before your property was subdivided. That makes it a grandfathered public easement, regardless of what your little papers say." I stared at her in disbelief. She was completely wrong. I'd had a surveyor confirm the boundaries just days earlier, but she was stating her position with such confidence that I wondered if she actually believed her own nonsense. "Ma'am, you're mistaken. This is private property, and I'm asking you to leave." "Are you threatening me?" Jennifer's voice rose to a pitch that probably startled birds in the surrounding trees. "Everyone heard that. He's threatening me." The 2 residents who had joined her protest looked uncomfortable and began backing away. Even they seemed to realize that Jennifer was escalating the situation beyond reason. Just then, my lumber delivery truck appeared around the bend on Maple Ridge. The morning of November 15th started like any other, with me working in my shop on a custom bookshelf for a client in the city. The steady rhythm of my planer had a meditative quality that helped me forget about the ongoing drama with Jennifer Walsh, at least temporarily. I'd grown accustomed to the occasional slow-moving car creeping past my property, and the harassment had seemed to plateau at a manageable level of annoyance. That peaceful illusion shattered at exactly 9:47 a.m. when the roar of multiple vehicles racing up my driveway cut through the morning air like a chainsaw through silk. I dropped my tools and rushed outside, expecting to see Jennifer and perhaps a few of her HOA cronies staging another one of their theatrical protests. Instead, I found myself staring at a convoy that looked like something out of an action movie. 2 sheriff's department cruisers, an unmarked black SUV, a fire department rescue vehicle, and bringing up the rear, a news van from Channel 7 with its satellite dish already extending skyward. My heart hammered against my ribs as uniformed officers emerged from their vehicles, hands resting on their service weapons. The lead deputy, a stern-faced woman I didn't recognize, approached me with purposeful strides. "Mr. Morrison, I'm Deputy Sarah Chen with the County Sheriff's Department. We need to talk." Behind her, I could see a news crew setting up their equipment while a reporter I recognized from the evening news checked her hair in a compact mirror. Whatever was happening, Jennifer had managed to turn it into a media event. "What's this about, Deputy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. "We received a report that you've been illegally blocking access to a county road and may be in possession of stolen property," she replied, consulting a tablet. "We need to inspect your property and verify your ownership documentation." I felt the blood draining from my face. Stolen property? What stolen property? Before Deputy Chen could answer, I heard a familiar voice cutting through the morning, air like nails on a chalkboard. Jennifer Walsh emerged from the black SUV, dressed in what appeared to be her most professional outfit, a navy business suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She was accompanied by a man in an expensive suit who I assumed was a lawyer, and another woman carrying a briefcase and official-looking documents. "There he is!" Jennifer announced dramatically, pointing at me as if I were a fugitive who'd been captured after a lengthy manhunt. "That's the man who's been illegally blocking public access and harassing our community." The news reporter immediately perked up, and I could see the camera operator swinging his equipment in my direction. This was exactly the kind of sensational local story that television news thrived on: angry neighbors, property disputes, and now apparently criminal accusations. "Ma'am, please step back and let us handle this," Deputy Chen instructed Jennifer, though her tone suggested this wasn't the first time she'd had to manage Jennifer's theatrical tendencies. The deputy turned back to me. "Mr. Morrison, we've received allegations that the gate and chain you've installed were stolen from county property, and that you're using them to illegally block a public right-of-way that was established in 1987. My mind reeled as I tried to process this latest accusation. The gate and chain had been on my property for as long as I could remember. My grandfather had installed them decades ago to keep his cattle from wandering onto the road. The idea that they were stolen was absurd, but I realized that Jennifer had somehow managed to convince law enforcement that there was legitimacy to her claims. "Deputy, I can show you the receipts for that hardware," I said, trying to remain calm. "My grandfather bought that gate at Henderson's feed store in 1985. I have all the documentation in my house." "We'll need to see that documentation," she replied. "But first, I need to inform you that we have a warrant to search your property for evidence related to these allegations." She handed me a folded document that I scanned quickly, my hands trembling slightly. It was indeed a search warrant, signed by Judge Patricia Whitmore, authorizing law enforcement to search my property for stolen county property, including but not limited to gates, signage, and road maintenance equipment. "This is insane," I muttered, more to myself than to anyone else. "What's insane?" Jennifer interjected loudly enough for the news cameras to capture, "is that this man thinks he can steal public property and block access to a road that serves 200 families. I was about to respond when something in Jennifer's expression caught my attention. There was a smugness there that went beyond mere vindication. She looked like someone who was enjoying a private joke. And that's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Standing behind Jennifer's lawyer was a man I recognized but couldn't immediately place. He was middle-aged, wearing a county maintenance uniform, and he kept glancing nervously between Jennifer and me. It took me a moment to remember where I'd seen him before, and when the memory surfaced, everything suddenly made a horrible kind of sense. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been walking along the creek at the back of my property when I'd encountered this same man examining the old wooden posts that marked my eastern boundary. He'd claimed to be conducting a routine survey for the county, and I'd thought nothing of it at the time. Now, seeing him here with Jennifer, I realized I'd been played. "Deputy Chen," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "I think I need to speak with you privately." "All conversations need to be conducted in the open," Jennifer announced. "We have nothing to hide here." But Deputy Chen seemed to pick up on the urgency in my voice. She gestured for me to step away from the group, and I quickly explained what I'd remembered about the county employee. "That man told me he was conducting a survey," I whispered. "But now he's here with Mrs. Walsh. I think this whole thing might be a setup." Deputy Chen's expression shifted from official neutrality to something resembling concern. She glanced back at the group, her eyes settling on the nervous county employee, then returned her attention to me. "Mr. Morrison, do you have your property documents readily available?" "They're in my house, all of them. Deeds, surveys, tax records, everything going back to 1962. Let's go take a look." As we walked toward my house, I could hear Jennifer's voice rising behind us, demanding to know what we were discussing and insisting that she had a right to be present for any examination of evidence. The news crew was following at a respectful distance, their camera capturing every moment of what was shaping up to be a very public humiliation, though I wasn't sure yet who would be on the receiving end. Inside my house, I pulled out the file cabinet where I kept all my property documentation. Deputy Chen examined the papers methodically, occasionally cross-referencing items on her tablet. After about 10 minutes, she looked up at me with an expression that was hard to read. "Mr. Morrison, these documents clearly establish your ownership of this property and show that your driveway has never been a public road. The survey from 1962 shows the same boundaries as your most recent survey from last month." Relief flooded through me, but Deputy Chen wasn't finished. "However, I need to ask you about this gate. You said your grandfather purchased it in 1985? "That's right. I have the receipt somewhere in here." "Where?" I rummaged through another folder and found the faded yellow receipt from Henderson's feed store, dated March 12, 1985. Deputy Chen studied the receipt, then pulled up something on her tablet. Her frown deepened as she scrolled through what appeared to be an official database. "Mr. Morrison, I need you to come outside with me. There's something we need to verify." We walked back outside to find that the situation had somehow become even more chaotic. Jennifer was now standing directly in front of the camera, delivering what appeared to be a prepared statement about property rights versus community needs, and the dangers of unchecked individual selfishness. The county employee was huddled, with Jennifer's lawyer, both of them speaking in hushed, urgent tones. When they saw us approaching, they broke apart quickly, but not before I caught the look of panic that flashed across the county worker's face. "Ladies and gentlemen," Deputy Chen announced loudly enough to get everyone's attention, "I need to examine the gate in question." We all trooped down to my entrance, where Deputy Chen produced a small digital camera and began photographing the gate from multiple angles. She paid particular attention to a small metal plate attached to one of the hinges, something I'd never really noticed before. After several minutes of documentation, Deputy Chen called over to the county employee. "Mr. Garrett, could you come here, please?" The man approached reluctantly, his nervousness now obvious to everyone present. Jennifer watched him with an expression that had shifted from smug confidence to something approaching alarm. "Mr. Garrett," Deputy Chen continued, "can you tell me about this serial number?" She pointed to the metal plate on the gate hinge. Mr. Garrett's face went pale. I'm not sure what you're asking." According to county records, this serial number was assigned to a gate that was reported stolen from the county maintenance yard in March of 1985. The same month, coincidentally, that Mr. Morrison's grandfather purchased an identical gate from Henderson's feed store. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see Jennifer's lawyer whispering urgently in her ear, while the news